Hello and welcome. This is We Make Art, and I am your host, artist and mentor Sarah Rockwood. I am so very glad you are here today with me, getting ready to delve deep into something else that affects our art and our soul and our lives. And just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into today's topic. You may hear some thumps and bumps and perhaps even a in the back of the track. We just got a new kitten in the household, and her name is Freya, and she's adorable, and she's very active. She's the most wriggly thing I have ever held in my entire life. Like I love cats. You know I love cats. But I am I am unnerved by this adorable, silky, floofy thing. She's a long-haired cat. Never had a long-haired cat before. I've never had a kitten. Well, I haven't had a kitten since I was a little kid, so I don't remember. I've only ever adopted adult cats, and this time we adopted a kitten, and she's a handful. She's a handful. And the introductory process with the adult cat, yada, yada, yada. You don't need to know all these details. I'm just letting you know, if you hear a bang, a scratch, or a it is a kitten in another room way upstairs being very loud. But yeah, go on my Instagram if you want to see pictures of her, because as soon as she'll hold still for a photo or even a video, I will get that out there. So it is September. I can't believe it. I know the memes are everywhere about how slow January, February, March felt, and then how fast the rest of the year is gone, but it is September. It's mind-blowingly, it happened mind-blowingly fast for me and my body and my spirit. I'm like, wow, we're here. And the title of this episode, as you saw, the Back to School Siren song for Grownups, is born from, this whole topic today is born from the fact that every September that rolls around, I get into that sort of back to school spirit. And I know I'm not alone in that. Like, even if you haven't stepped foot in a classroom in years, or you don't have children that are heading back to school that you are shepherding through that process, there is a shift in the air that calls to something deep in all of us. And maybe that's years of conditioning, and maybe that's also the equinox approaching, and we are in eclipse season and all those things. But there is something subtle and powerful moving through the air right now. A sense of beginnings. And yes, of blank notebooks and sharpened pencils and pens, and just a general fresh start has sort of entered the chat, is in the air. This idea that with September, with the passing of summer, I guess it's also that the harvest, right? We've gestated these past few months. We've sat with, percolated on all these beautiful things, and now there is the opportunity to begin again. There's that sort of joyful anticipation of the blank page. And even a sense of independence. Oh, I'm going to say something a little salty, maybe a little spicy. I would imagine, I don't have children personally, as you know, I have cats. But I would imagine that there is a bit of freedom that comes to adults when the children finally go back to school. I felt it even with my nephew, that, like, you know, after 8, and my friends that have children, after like 8 weeks of being out of school, everybody wants to get back to school, which allows for a little bit more independence as parents, I would imagine. And I think with a new school year, for me, it always felt like a little bit of an opportunity for reinvention. I went to the same elementary school from kindergarten right through to grade 8. And I longed for new people. through that whole process. I was just like, okay, it's back to school. It's exciting. I get to do something new and learn, because I know we're all nerds here. We all love learning. But there was an element of being able to reinvent oneself, especially when we're younger kids. The amount of change that happens in us physically, let alone intellectually, there is a reinvention. There is a new version of us that gets to take center stage in September. And with that, with all the joy of that and the anticipation of that, there is at times anxiety, right? The new can be fearful. We can have fear of the new. You know what I'm trying to say there. And for some of us, and I think there might also be an element of shame that gets tied into back to school time. If you were in a family where things maybe weren't as organized as you needed them to be for the first day of school, or you didn't have the resources to have the things the other kids in the class had when you got back to school, that is hard on kids. I mean, it's hard on adults, so it's got to be hard on kids, right? And we are, as adults, I think we like to think we're very different from children, when in fact, I think we're just bigger. And yes, our brains have matured, and there's a bit more, and some people not that much more, emotional reasoning and cognition, but maybe cognition's the wrong word. But we're not that different from our childlike selves in a lot of ways. And if we have things in our childhood that we haven't shone a light on and really examined, then they do carry through into our adult years. So if there is some sort of shame lingering around those back to school memories, then that can come up again for us right now. Or maybe, like me, for most of my elementary school years and part of my high school years and part of my college years, you didn't have a lot of friends. And making friends was maybe difficult. She said with a halt in her voice. Yeah, making friends was difficult. I did find it so. And this time of year can sometimes bring a sense of loneliness as well, which is an interesting thing to balance. This idea of reinvention and newness, the opportunity to begin again, the beautiful wave of potential that we are on, balanced with perhaps some shame, perhaps some loneliness, and perhaps some anxiety and fear of just where this new energy is going to take us. But here's the beautiful truth in that. We're not those kids anymore. So we have more agency now than we did when we were little, right? I say right like you don't know that. Of course you know that. You're like a grown-up now, and you have like a driver's license and like maybe a passport and things like that, and we pay taxes. Wow. So we get to, as adults, we get to embrace the challenge of creating the life we want. And I say embrace the challenge of it because creating the life we want is not an easy task. I'm just going to say it plainly. And I'm not only a member, I'm also a client. Like, I'm a coach and a mentor and an artist myself, and I am in this work every day. And I can say honestly that it is a challenge that must be embraced. The idea of creating the life that you really want. And for me, it is a daily practice to remember to put my needs first and to take action with ease, with nourishment, with spirit towards my goals. So September offers us the energy of accountability and discipline, right? We get back to a rigid schedule. We get back to teachers grading us and all those. Oh God, I didn't even mention that in the shadow work. Grades. Ooh. All right. Okay, maybe we should forget this whole back to school thing. No, I mean, I guess we're no longer being graded. Or I hope we're no longer being graded. Or we no longer attach our worth to the grades, for lack of a better term, the approval, the disapproval of others that we are receiving. That we've begun the process of separating that from the validity we have as human beings. So yes, September offers us the energy of accountability and discipline. But now as adults, we have this added bonus of getting to define those terms for ourselves. We talk about this again and again. I think one of the secrets to life is to define these things, these terms. Like today we're talking about accountability and discipline. In the past we've talked about success. When you define those terms for yourself, based on the life you wish to create, and in relation to the season of life you are in, you really step into the fullness of yourself. And you get closer to the reality of a life that you have created. Yeah, I think a lot of people, and as artists we have, okay, finish your sentence, Sarah, and then jump to your next thought. I think a lot of people see life as an automatic process over which they have no control. You're born, you go through the system, and then eventually at some point you will die, and your life along the way is out of your control. And okay, yes, control is a fallacy. Life is outside your control. But as artists, we have, again, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Yes, okay, so control is a fallacy. You ultimately can't control everything, but you do have choice and agency. And with an idea in mind, with a vision in mind, you can craft a life of your choosing. And as artists, here we go to the thoughts I was jumping to. As artists, we get to, or we have the ability to see life with a little bit more perspective. Through the act of creating works of art, we take a step back and look at things and feel into things and observe things and then create things from the ephemeral, from nowhere, that represent those thoughts and feelings. And that action really empowers us to create something beautiful in our life. It gives us the skills to craft the life we want. So defining these terms for ourselves is super important, because accountability looks very different for a solo artist versus someone who is a member of a company. And discipline looks different, for a dancer who's preparing for a competition next month versus an author whose first draft of their book isn't due for a year. They're very different lives. I know we're all under this umbrella of art, but they're very different lives, which, again, it's like we're fingerprints. We're all little fingerprints. Sometimes when I'm doing this podcast, and I know I'm my fourth wall break all the time. Is that what this is? Who knows? I'm just going to talk to you for a second. Sarah, you've been talking to us this whole time. I know. Be quiet. Okay. Sometimes when I'm doing this podcast, that these metaphors and analogies come out, and I'm like, oh, okay, I think we maybe have too many in the soup today, but we'll go with it. The idea that we are all little fingerprints, individual, It's so wonderful. And also, again, a challenge. So we embrace the challenge. Right, we embrace the challenge. So when we are called by this fresh start energy, when the air starts to change and the leaves start to change, and if you're in the southern hemisphere, things start to get warm again and come to life, like when we are called by this energy, this back to school siren song, we have to assess not only our goals and dreams, but also the season of life we're in. So for me right now, I want to record another album. I do. And I also know the level at which I operate, that I want this album to be done at. You know, I've done a few in my day, so I know what they take financially, and I know what they take spiritually. I know what kind of fortitude I need in my personage in order to record an album. And when I say fortitude, I don't mean armor. I don't mean intensity. I mean a sort of, for me now, I would call it a spiritual strength. I need a level of, trust in myself and in the work. Faith, an unwavering faith in the work. Because you know this, you make art. When you embark on something new like that, and if it involves other people, you know, you're steering the ship. You have to know where the course is charted. Oh my God, how many analogies. We've gone from thumbprints, fingerprints to charting a course. You know where I'm going with this. So I am neither financially nor spiritually prepared in this moment to record that album. So my focus in this season is on writing. That is something I can do, that I have access to. You know, I've already got the laptop, I've already got the recording equipment, because you're hearing this podcast right now. I can write and polish and keep working. And also, because of the trauma I have endured in the music business and in songwriting and recording, you guys know my story. If you don't, go back to like episode 2, somewhere around there. Yeah, I think it was episode 2 where I called My Story, where I lay out what happened to me. Because of all that, I know that I need to allow myself softness and play around my writing process. That through writing the material for this new album, I am leaving extra room. I am creating a space where I can teach my nervous system that expressing myself through song is safe. That's really big for me. Like, the idea expressing myself through song being safe is kind of huge. And I think it speaks to reinvention as well. Which is why, you know, September 1st, I was like, I got to do some writing today. You know, I've dabbled here and there, but nope, we're going to really get into it today, Sarah. And yeah, reinventing my relationship, or creating a new relationship with songwriting is a challenge I am embracing. Because in this season, the discipline for me is just practically keeping short sessions in my calendar where I write without expectation of the outcome. Period. That's the discipline. Can I get 3 sessions in my calendar a week where I get to sit down and write with no expectation of my outcome? This is something that's challenging as adult artists. is that or can be, is that beginner mind. The idea that like, it is enough to put the session in my calendar, sit in front of my laptop, and if all I record is a single note, that is success in this season. And that can be really challenging when we have a history of serious productivity, like almost ruining ourselves productivity, which is what I had before and how hard I was working before. And then for me, the accountability, so that's the discipline, the accountability coin for me right now. Oh my goodness, another metaphor, another analogy. We'll just let them all go. So the accountability component for me right now is being intentional with my thoughts and being intentionally kind to myself in this art-making process. If you have experienced, I'm going to say trauma, but a lot of people, I think, have experienced trauma and don't realize that it was traumatic. Like if you have been scolded in an environment, if you've gone to any kind of art schooling, that probably happened to you. I bet money that happened to you, and we are somewhat raised as artists with the idea of suffering and discipline and accountability, being discipline in particular, being like, are you working hard enough? Work harder. And that work harder mentality often leads to, I have found in my clients and in myself, a real negative self-talk. So in this season, I am being accountable with my thoughts and creating a mental environment that is kind and nourishing and feels safe. Because I know that as I feel safer and safer in my work will become more expansive, more me. I will become more open to what wishes to come through me. As I say this, I think, my goal is to remove force from my art making. That doesn't, and this is what I mean about defining discipline for yourself, because that doesn't mean a lack of discipline. There was a time where discipline and force were kind of one and the same for me. I'm going to get up every day at 7:30 and I'm going to write 1,200 words in my novel and then I'll go to work. And there was a season of life where that had to happen. Maybe it didn't have to happen, but at the time I thought it had to happen. But I'm no longer in that place. So how can I nourish myself, create so much internal safety that it is flow? Force has been left behind, and I am in flow. That I can just be open to the flow. Because the more open we are as artists, the more powerful our expression becomes. And we support that journey, that crafting or creating more and more openness within ourselves by crafting and creating the life we want to live. They're two sides of the same coin, the art making and the life living. You can have one without the other, but it'll take you down. I truly believe it is an unsustainable way of life, and I speak from experience on that. There was a time where, when I was working as a professional songwriter, as a vocal producer, as a vocal coach, and my life was absolute garbage, my personal life. I was in an abusive relationship. My health was in the toilet. I hate that expression. I should find a different. My health was not great. I mean, my hair was coming out in handfuls. My stomach was distended all the time. My skin, like I was not living. I was pushing through with the art. Everything was forcing. You know, in world-class music studios, feeling like hot garbage. Like I can remember doing sessions where, I mean, world-class music studios, absolutely beautiful places. And I'm like surreptitiously downing like 2 extra strength Advils every 2 to 3 hours because my cramps and my headaches are just so bad, but I can't take any time off. And they always schedule these things when I've got my period, but I got to keep pushing through. So like, I'm just going to like, I'm just going to overdrug myself. And that did lead to liver problems. So, learn from my mistakes. Learn from the abuse I have put my body through. That like, it just, and that isn't to say that the art made in that time was bad. Some of it was very good. But at what cost? At what cost? And I reject the notion that you can only have one or the other. No. We can have a life that beautifully supports us and make beautiful art that nourishes us and comes from our soul. But let's make the first step on that journey full of ease. Full of ease. Soft, nourishing, generous. I'm going to give you an exercise here, and if you choose to work on it, I hope you do. If you feel resistance start to build up in your body, if you feel tension start to arise, pause, breathe, and keep brainstorming till you find something that lets the body settle. The body will tell you. It'll tell you. It knows right or yes, no, up, down. It knows everything before our brains do, So think about your long-term goal or goals, but let's just pick one goal for now, right? Ease. And discern one small thing you could do every day with ease. I'm going to keep drumming that in. With ease, something super small and easy that you could do every day for the next 30 days that moves you towards your goal. And I say every day, and I stress the ease, because it's a nourishing action. It has to be, I don't want to put too much pressure on this, but we want it to be something that through the doing of it, we are nourished. And then just do that thing. Release all other expectations of yourself and see where you're at in 30 days. I know it sounds simple, and I also know it is challenging, right? The idea of like picking, that's the thing. We think that these teeny tiny steps will get us nowhere when they in fact move us faster than the giant leaps. It's really the tortoise and the hare. Again, another analogy, but it's really when we go slow, when our nervous system feels safe with every step we take, the steps become embodied and we refrain from slipping back. The easiest example is like, as opposed to going to the gym on day one and like hammering out a workout for an hour and a half, just walk around your block for 5 minutes. And you're like, well, that's not going to get me my goals. That's not going to Yeah, but you know what? It's the consistency. It's that's where the discipline, that's the discipline component in this. is that 30 days. And the accountability lands in, is this nourishing? So yeah, start with defining discipline and accountability for yourself if you feel called to do that. If it's necessary for you to do that, or if this discussion has kind of solidified it for you, then move on to this exercise. And find that one thing you can do for the next 30 days that feels nourishing and moves you forward. And if this conversation has stirred something in you, if you feel like you're at the threshold of your next chapter, let's put another metaphor in the bunch. If you feel like you're on the threshold, that you're like, I am in this September energy, but I'm not quite sure how to step through. Like, yes, Sarah, I hear you that I want something simple and nourishing, but I'm not sure how to create that for myself. Well, then check out Embracing an Art-Filled Life. It's a self-paced course rooted in this softness and sovereignty and soul. You'll find video lessons and guided practices and a beautiful workbook to take you through, and a sacred space. It's a sacred space you can return to again and again as you reconnect with the art that's calling you, and as you build the life you want to live. It's not about force or pushing. It's about remembering who you are and learning to create from that place. Is there a place in your life where you need to do that with your art and your art making process? If so, this course can really help you with that. And you can find all the details for it in the show notes. So this season, this back to school siren song of a season, is yours to define. And this back to school energy, let's look at it as a call back to the self, to your art, your pace, your way. And I'll be back in a couple weeks. But until then, be gentle with yourself. You are doing very sacred work.